The silence in our house wasn't peaceful. It was heavy, like the air before a thunderstorm. I, Liam, 28M, stood in the hallway, staring at the split lip of my wife's 4-year-old brother, Leo. We had adopted him after his parents died, raising him alongside our own toddler. But tonight, the vibrant, Superman costume-wearing boy was trembling, his eyes wide with a terror that no child should ever know. My father, Robert, stood in the corner of the living room, wringing his hands, his face pale and eyes glazed, as if he were trying to wake up from a nightmare. And then there was Victoria, 49F, my stepmother. She wasn't screaming. She was adjusting her silk scarf, looking at the crying child with the cold, detached curiosity of a scientist observing a lab rat. He fell, Victoria said, her voice smooth as glass. He's clumsy, Robert. I told you he shouldn't be running. But the nanny cam hidden in the bookshelf, precaution Sarah insisted on because she never trusted. Victoria's saccharine smile told a different story. We hadn't watched it yet, but I knew. I could feel the malice radiating off her. We had left the kids with my dad for 3 hours. Just 3 hours to attend a tasting for our upcoming wedding. We came back to a crime scene. He didn't fall, Leo whispered, burying his face in Sarah's neck. She squeezed me. She said I'm not real family. Victoria let out a sharp, mocking laugh. Oh, please. The boy has an imagination, just like his sister. Trying to ruin my reputation because you can't stand that your father finally found happiness. She turned to my dad, her eyes narrowing. Robert, tell them. Tell them how unruly the brat was. My father blinked, looking between his wife and his bleeding grandson. I was in the kitchen, he stammered, his voice weak. I heard a crash. Victoria said. He trailed off. He looked thinner than I remembered, his skin grayish. For years, I thought he was just aging. Now, looking at the bruising grip Victoria had on his arm, I wondered if it was something else. We threw them out. I physically blocked the door as Victoria tried to launch into a tirade about how we were ungrateful children. As she stepped onto the porch, she leaned in close to me, her perfume cloying and sweet. You think you can ban me from the wedding, Liam? I plan this family's rise. I decide when I leave. That night, after the police left and the report was filed, Sarah and I sat in the dark office and pulled up the footage. It wasn't just a slap. The video showed Victoria cornering Leo. She wasn't shouting. She was whispering. She grabbed his face, digging her nails in, and hissed, "You are a stray dog. And stray dogs get put down if they bark too much." Then she shoved him into the coffee table. But it was what she did after the shove that froze my blood. While Leo cried, she didn't comfort him. She walked over to my father's jacket, which was draped over the chair, and pulled out his phone. She scrolled for a solid minute, typed something, deleted the log, and put it back. Then she turned to the crying boy and smiled. This isn't just a bad stepmother, Liam, Sarah said, her voice shaking as she pointed at the screen. Look at the timestamp. She sent that text 2 minutes before we walked in. Who is she texting from your dad's phone? We weren't dealing with a jealous woman anymore. We were dealing with a predator who had just made a mistake. I called a private investigator the next morning. If she wanted a war over our wedding, she was going to get one. But I had a feeling the wedding was just a distraction for something much darker. While the detective, a gritty ex-cop named Miller, started digging into Victoria's past, Sarah and I tried to maintain a semblance of normalcy. But memories began to resurface, taking on a sinister new light. Specifically, the baby shower incident from a few months prior. At the time, we thought it was just narcissism. Now, I realized it was an infiltration operation. Back then, Victoria had hijacked the planning from Sarah's best friend. We wanted a casual pizza party. Victoria wanted a Barbie dream house, explosion of pink, gold, and excess. She had insisted on arriving at the venue 4 hours early to set up. My sister, Laura, had outsmarted her by tricking her into a spa appointment while we tore down her decorations and restored our original theme. It was a funny story we told at dinner parties. But sitting in my office now, Miller threw a file on my desk that changed everything. Your stepmother didn't just want to decorate, Miller said, lighting a cigarette despite my no-smoking sign. I checked the venue's security logs. She was there alone for 45 minutes before she started putting up balloons. And she wasn't in the main hall. She was in the back office. The back office? I asked, confused. Why? Because the owner of that venue is your father's accountant. Miller replied grimly. She wasn't setting up a party, Liam. She was hacking a computer. She used the noise of the party prep as cover to install a keylogger on his system. My stomach turned. The obsession with controlling events wasn't about being the center of attention. It was about access. Access to files, access to phones, access to people. She had been systematically isolating my father, driving wedges between him and his children, not just out of jealousy, but to remove the witnesses. Then came the financial records. Miller had pulled my father's bank statements, something I hadn't seen in years. There were transfers, massive ones, consulting fees paid to shell companies registered in the Caymans, and the beneficiary of the trust fund that was supposed to go to me and my sister. It had been amended 3 months ago. The signature looked like my father's, but it was shaky, weak. She's bleeding him dry, I whispered. That's why he looks so sick. It's not age. It's stress. Or worse. It gets worse, Miller said, flipping a page. I ran her fingerprints from a glass she touched at a restaurant. Victoria Black doesn't exist. But Vanessa Rourke does. She has 2 ex-husbands in Florida. Divorced. Widowed, Miller corrected. Both died of heart failure within 2 years of the marriage. Both left her everything. The realization hit me like a physical blow. The incident with Leo, the screaming about family, wasn't just cruelty. Leo, with his habit of hiding in small spaces during hide-and-seek, must have overheard something. He wasn't just a child she disliked. He was a loose end. And now, with the wedding coming up, she knew her time was running out. She needed to make her final move before we cut her off completely. My phone buzzed. It was my stepbrother, her biological son. He had been blindly loyal to her, refusing to believe she hurt Leo. But the text was different this time. It wasn't defensive. Liam, I found something in Mom's garage. We need to talk. Alone. Don't tell Dad. I met my stepbrother, Julian, in a rainy parking lot of a 24-hour diner. He looked terrified. He handed me a shoebox wrapped in duct tape. She asked me to burn this, he said, his voice cracking. She said it was old tax papers. But I looked inside. Inside were vials. Unmarked glass vials containing a clear liquid. And a notebook. It wasn't a diary. It was a schedule. Robert, morning coffee, 3 drops. Robert, evening whiskey, 5 drops. My God, I breathed. She's poisoning him. I thought she was just strict, Julian sobbed. I thought she just wanted everything perfect. But she talks to people on the phone. People who sound dangerous. Liam, she knows about the PI. She knows you're tracking the money. She said if she can't have the fortune, no one will. We rushed the vials to a private lab. It was digitalis, foxglove. Hard to trace if you aren't looking for it. Mimics a heart attack. Exactly what killed her previous husbands. We had enough for the police, enough to put her away for life. But there was a problem. My father was isolated in that house with her, and the wedding was only 2 days away. If we sent the cops now, she might panic and give him a lethal dose before they could breach the door. Or worse, take him hostage. We needed to draw her out. The wedding. It was the perfect trap. We had already banned her, served her with a restraining order, and hired security. She believed she was excluded, but we knew her narcissism. She wouldn't be able to resist crashing it, especially if she thought she was losing control. We set the stage. I called my father, feigning a breakdown. I told him I wanted to reconcile, that I was firing the PI, and that I wanted him to walk Sarah down the aisle because her brother was sick. I lied through my teeth. I could hear Victoria breathing on the other line, listening. Bring her, I said, choking back bile. Bring Victoria. We want the whole family together. It worked. The bait was taken. But Sarah was terrified. You're inviting a killer to our wedding? I'm inviting her to her arrest, I replied. The day of the wedding arrived. The venue was a fortress disguised as a floral paradise. Underneath the tuxedos of the groomsmen were holsters. The waiters were plainclothes officers. We had safety protocols for the kids. Leo and our son were to be kept in a secure room with an armed guard until the ceremony was over. As the organ music started, the double doors opened. My father walked in, looking frail, leaning heavily on Victoria. She looked triumphant. She wore a white dress, a deliberate insult to the bride, and a smile that could cut glass. She thought she had won. She thought the poison made my father compliant, and her presence made us submissive. She didn't notice that the guests were unusually quiet. She didn't notice that the priest was actually Detective Miller. As they reached the altar, Victoria turned to the crowd, preparing to make a speech she hadn't been asked to give. I just want to say, she began, her voice booming, that love conquers all obstacles, even ungrateful children. Cut the crap, Vanessa, Miller said, dropping the Bible and pulling out his badge. The color drained from her face. Excuse me. Vanessa Rourke, you're under arrest for the murders of your previous husbands and the attempted murder of Robert, Miller announced. In that second, the mask fell. Her face twisted into a snarl of pure animalistic rage. She reached into her purse, not for a gun, but for a syringe. She lunged at my father. Chaos erupted. Before Victoria could plunge the syringe into my father's neck, my best friend, acting as best man, tackled her. They went down in a heap of tulle and white lace. The syringe skittered across the marble floor. Get off me. You have no idea who I am, she shrieked, her voice dropping an octave, sounding demonic. Police swarmed her. As they dragged her away, handcuffed, she didn't look at me or the police. She looked at Julian, her son, who was standing by the entrance, tears streaming down his face. You traitor, she screamed. You weak, pathetic little boy. I did this for us. Julian turned away. That was the moment her power truly broke. My father collapsed. We rushed him to the hospital immediately. The doctors confirmed the chronic poisoning, but said we caught it just in time. The recovery would be long. His heart was damaged, but he would live. The weeks following the wedding were a blur of legal depositions and hospital visits. The story made the news, the Black Widow bride. It turned out she had taken out life insurance policies on my dad. Just days before the wedding. The baby shower hijacking? She had planted listening devices in the teddy bears to monitor if we were onto her. The attack on Leo? He had seen her crushing pills into the whiskey decanter. We didn't get the wedding reception we planned. But we got something better, freedom. 3 months later, we sat in our garden. Leo was running through the sprinklers, his lip fully healed, the trauma fading with the help of a good therapist. My dad sat in a wheelchair on the patio, watching him. He was frail, but his eyes were clear for the first time in a decade. I'm sorry, Dad said, his voice raspy. I chose her over you. Over and over again. You were drugged, Dad, I said, putting a hand on his shoulder. And manipulated. You're here now. That's what matters. She made me believe I was unlovable without her, he confessed. That you all hated me. We never hated you, Sarah said softly, bringing out a tray of lemonade. We just hated watching you disappear. Julian came by later. We had invited him. It was awkward, but he had saved our father's life. He was starting therapy too, trying to untangle the web of lies his mother had spun around him since birth. He wasn't fully family yet, but the door was open an inch or two, just as Sarah had suggested. As the sun set, I looked at my wife, my son, and the family that had almost been destroyed. Victoria was in a maximum security cell, awaiting trial. She would never hurt us again. We had walked through fire, faced a monster in a white dress, and come out the other side. So, Sarah whispered, leaning her head on my shoulder. Technically, we never finished the ceremony. Does that mean we aren't married? I smiled, watching Leo laugh as the dog chased him. I think surviving an assassination attempt counts as a vow. Till death do us part, remember? Let's hope death takes a vacation for a while, she replied. I kissed her forehead. Agreed.